You're live.
Yes, I am live. Welcome in to the Off-Brand Avalanche podcast. In today's episode, we're going to go over some of the moves that the Avs have made so far in the offseason, how we feel about them, and what we would have done differently, or maybe we would have done exactly the same things. I can tell you that we're going to fight with each other a lot because we disagree on all of these.
Whoa.
I think we've come around partially. I think we've come around
At different
partially.
time frames, we have disagreed.
Okay.
Yes.
But,
yes. So let's
do that. And we're only going to talk about our first and third round picks because we didn't have a second round pick. And if we're being completely honest, rounds 4 through 7, we do not know enough about those guys to give you detailed information.
No.
So Justin Barron and Jean-Luc Foudy, I love the Foudy pick. That was my favorite pick of the draft. Easily.
The Foudy pick? Yeah. If you guy in the third round who literally, like, if you ask the consistent number of scouts who is the best skater in this draft, 9 out of 10 would say Foudy.
Yeah, that man's
and if you can get a guy like that in the third round, the value is absolutely incredible. So I love that pick. But he has a lot to work.
Yeah, which
he
is
has
why he was
a
third
lot to work. Yeah. But honestly, if you're drafting to an identity,
such a good fit.
Avs killed it with that pick. He's going to be able to, dude, he was invited to camp this season. He's going to be able to skate with all the other guys, like keep up with all the other guys, skate around. But then it's like, oh shoot, that shot's lacking. He'll get rocked by someone. It's like, okay, this is why he's a third round pick and more development. But that's why he is a third round pick. And honestly, out of all the third rounders this season, I kind of think that Foudy has as much potential to become a full-time NHLer than the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a perfect fit. I mean, you're talking about one of the fastest teams in the league, taking one of the fastest players in the draft, probably the fastest player in the draft. So you gotta love that right off the bat. He's also, I think he's a very high ceiling player. Like, where does he probably project? You're probably talking third line, maybe fourth line if he can develop that side of his game. But with this top end speed that he has the potential for more. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a top 6 role at all.
You see, I think his floor, and I honestly think this is a very, very good stylistic comparison for his floor, is a Matt Nieto.
Yeah.
And I would be very surprised if Foudy doesn't ever turn into something like that. Like a fourth line guy that can skate but just can't finish, doesn't really battle on the defensive side of the puck. But he has, if you're drafting in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounds, you're looking for a guy that has an NHL ready trait. And skating, he's ready for that. And honestly, skating is one of the most. So, I love that pick. And is his floor, and his ceiling is definitely not Connor McDavid, definitely not Nathan McKinnon, but somewhere in the upper echelons of the other skaters in the rest of the So
yeah, I will say I do think there is bust potential. There's always a little bit of bust potential, and he does need to develop some kind of grit to his game to play on a fourth line like Nieto did. There are still movements to be made there. I think he does make those. The other question I do have about this pick, it lessened the blow because it did hurt a little bit to see Tyson Malonic go the pick before us. A kid that grew up in Denver, played for Joe Sakic, and was projected by some people, Foudy was as well, projected somewhere between the late first to early second on a lot of boards. So it did hurt a little bit to see Malonic go right before the Avs were up, but Foudy is still an excellent, excellent value.
I'll tell you this: those two guys were on first round boards more than who's the guy from Columbus,
Chinikov, and probably more than Mukamadulin too, if we're being honest.
Yeah. So I mean, dude, literally no one had Chinikov on even a radar.
Not the even Canadian on the second round.
Dude, the Canadian broadcast, they're yeah, he's a winger. They're having to look up stuff. So honestly, I would have been more pissed if I was drafted Chinikov in the first round than Foudy in the first round by a
Yeah.
very wide margin.
Honestly, if the Avs had drafted Foudy in the first round, I would not have been that upset. Like, I would have been like, okay, that's a reach. But I would have
Yeah.
been like, that's a reach where you're looking at a guy that fits your identity and has a little bit of a ceiling that you can dream on. So, like, I love it in the third round. I would not have, like, ripped the Avs for it in the first round.
Yeah. So let's a little bit about their first round pick then, yeah?
Yeah, so the further we get from the draft, the more Justin Barron grows on me. You know, we talked
Yeah, me
about
too.
being kind of in a little gap where there weren't a ton of defensemen. Justin Barron was kind of the guy that was a bit of a reach, but still kind of in that range. I think he's got really good upside. I think he's got a pretty high floor. Like, I think he's got definitely a higher floor than Foudy, which is why he went earlier. But, like, I definitely see him making an NHL roster without much of a problem. I think he has an NHL career ahead of him, and I think he has the potential to be a top four, maybe even a little bit of potential for top pairing defenseman kind of status.
Yeah.
So I like this pick a lot. The question was the blood clotting issues with Barron, especially when he's playing at Mile High. That's something that you have to look at. But the Avs have better
Yeah.
doctors than I do, so if they believed in it and they said, you know what, this checks out, he's good. This is not a genetic thing. This is not going to be repeated. This is just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
Then all right, then I like it.
The history about it, it's not a genetic thing. It was kind of a single off kind of event, and it got, like, I hope it got fixed. That's what everyone's saying, and he's actually playing games right now. So, like, if he was playing with a blood clot, that would be a bit concerning. So I do think that it is fixed. But yeah, like Billy, like you said, I think this guy has a tremendous amount of upside. He was probably my third favorite defenseman in the entire draft, if we're being completely honest. And there, without the medical, history, there was a case to be made that he could have gone a lot higher, top 15, top 20. He did have a little bit of that Hendrix Lapierre feel, where it's like, like we don't really know how his medical records are going to check up because a lot of these teams can't go hand in hand with these guys.
Yeah.
But I do think this is another guy that fits the Audi. He's a smooth skating defenseman, and really, like, he's a two-way defenseman, kind of like a Cale Makar light. I know I'm not going to throw that name around all that up. He really is. If you watch his tapes, if you like read the scouting reports, he's not going to like absolutely wow you with the points, but he is a guy that can drive play in that same sense of the manner. I do think that the Avs, one of their weakest positions in their prospect pool was defense after Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins, who could both be realistically pushing for a roster spot this season. So I do think that this is a very good first round pick for the Avs, especially for the value that they got him.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. In our pre-draft show, I compared him to Charlie McAvoy. So stylistically, I think that's a fit. I think that is absolutely at his absolute ceiling.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets that good, but I like him stylistically to play that role. He can do a little bit of everything really well, and it's like you said, it's a good fit in the Avs system because after Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins, it drops off hard. It's Hellison, and then it's Zaravalov, and then there's not a guy in there that you're expecting to get.
Hellison, and the drop off between both Byram and Timmins, between Byram and Timmins, and then with Hellison is a lot.
That's quite a drop.
And then the drop off between even Hellison and Zaravalov is even a bigger gap in my opinion.
Ooh, I don't know. I like Zaravalov. I think that's a.
I do.
That's a guy that
there's also
I think could get
that Russian factor though.
Pairing. Yeah, that's fair.
If he's a guy that's like, oh, I'm gonna come over to the AHL and like maybe never push for like an NHL roster spot or like bottom six, seventh defenseman, there's a chance that he could never even come over. So that's kind of where I see that drop off. Drew Hellison is already in North America playing for Boston College. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I see that drop off. Not really in talent wise, but
if we're just talking about talent, I think I might actually have Zaravalov ahead of Hellison. If they were both playing like in the
Yeah.
NCAA right
Oh
now.
yeah.
But let's stay on topic here. Do you have anything else to say about some of these kids we drafted, or was there a later round pick that has caught your eyes after just watching some highlights?
Not really, because like time in the late round picks, it's like you're kind of just shooting for the stars,
Yeah.
like trying to take like the guy that could potentially become like the next like Pasternak was not even I can't even think Bergeron or whatever. Yeah, Kucherov or whatever. Yeah, like so. I don't have too much time on that right now
Take
because
your lottery ticket and get out.
Yeah,
basically.
pretty much. So
we got some big moves.
Yeah, not necessarily anything for me. I do like those two picks a lot. I actually like the more it grows on me. I really like the Justin Barron pick. I was a little bit upset at the time because I was hoping Lapierre would fall to us, and it was getting a little closer, but it ended up not happening. Billy, I know you might have wanted Gunler more.
Yep. I also liked Peterka.
Yeah. I
really would have liked
the two Russian kids or Amarov.
Yeah, Amarov went higher than I expected, even at 15.
Yeah, but a steal for the Maple Leafs. But
I do too.
I am definitely not mad at the Justin Barron pick. At least it's not Chinikov. So
definitely. While we're still on the draft, real quick, the Avs were pretty aggressive. It sounds like the rumors circulating have been that if Askarov had gotten past Nashville, the Avs were going to do everything they could to get up and grab Yaroslav Askarov, which I
heard that too, and that would have made me extremely excited.
Yeah.
Like every pick that was going to top 10, I was like, oh god, that's one pick that he's not.
One more pick
he's getting
fallen.
Yeah. So realistically, he was never going to fall to 25. In terms of goalie prospects, he's just way too good.
15 if we had screeched our way up the board.
Yeah. So that was the only way we were going to get Askarov, and in terms of draft capital, sometimes it's not necessarily worth the risk.
Yeah. So it didn't happen, but I like that the Avs have an aggressive mentality, especially looking at trying to get a star goalie, because that's something that might come up again in the future. But it has not so far this offseason, where we made some upgrades on offense and defense. Let's start
really quick. I think we should talk a little bit about the moves outside of the Avalanche organization, at least out west. The Pietrangelo move you want to start with, or the Pietrangelo signing, I mean.
Yeah, I'm glad the Avs stayed away, because on that contract, no thank you, basically, is what I have to say. I like Pietrangelo. I would have liked him on a 3-year deal. Even a 2-year deal would have been even better. On a 7-year deal, that's tough, especially for a team that's already pretty cap-strapped.
Dude, they had to move roster players out in order to make this work. For a defenseman, albeit an upper echelon defenseman in the NHL with Pietrangelo. But, with defensemen, Pietrangelo is on the latter half of the prime of his career. So there's going to be plenty of years for Vegas that Pietrangelo is not going to be performing to the standards in which he just signed with. But if we are talking about just next year, this does make the Golden Knights a lot better. But I don't think that the value of that contract is something that the Avs should have indulged in slightly.
I like what they did a lot better. I think that the Avs have a comparable level of upgrade to the Knights going into next year. And the arms race between the two of them, and the Avs did not put a hard cap on their window in the same way that the Golden Knights did.
Yeah. So, I don't necessarily love that move for the Knights in the short term, window. If that was if that's the contract that had to, if that was the contract that the Knights needed to give him in order to acquire him, then I guess. But then, dude, I'm just worried about the latter half of his career, paying a defenseman. What was it, $8 million, $9 million? I forgot the specific number, but
8 by 7.
Yeah, so in the latter half of his career, in a few years from now, a defenseman that's definitely starting to age, and there's realistic possibilities that he's going to be aging here in the next, like that contract for the Knights. does make them better for the next
Yeah.
couple of years. Makes them a force out west, but I like what the Avs have
And then
done.
it's the kind of contract. And then in the last 3 years, it's the kind of contract that you have to give away a first round pick to
Yeah.
get off your books.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's a tough one. I mean, maybe Pietrangelo ages gracefully, but
There's definitely a
just the
possibility.
optics of it right now are I would not have made that move. Let's also talk a little bit about Taylor wants to play for a contender Hall, signing with the Buffalo Sabres on a 1-year deal worth $8 million.
I
It's weird.
I
Maybe no one else was offering that kind of money. The rumored number for the Avs was 6.5. Take that with a grain of salt because that comes from Dater. We don't know, was that a number? Was that their initial offer? Was that a number that whoever told Dater that number did it? Was it upped later on? We don't know exactly where that number comes from, how valid it is. But $1.5 million more to play for Buffalo. At that point, I
Dude,
don't know if I'd even have gone to Buffalo.
he was coming out and saying it's like I'm going to take a 1-year deal to play for a contender, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the team that has the longest playoff drought in the entire NHL. And to me, chasing that $8 million contract, if that $6.5 million is rumored, chasing that extra $1.5 million to go play for a worse team feels like he's chasing the bag even in the future. Because I mean, he is going to get some more playing time with Buffalo. Might up his stats from the last couple of seasons playing next to Jack Eichel.
Honestly, though, I feel like he's going to lose himself money in the future because he would have had even better stats playing next to McKinnon and Rantanen.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's definitely a good point. And that's this whole part of this that just does not make sense to me whatsoever, man. It's like initially when the Brandon Saad trade happened, we'll get more into that. I was actually kind of like very disappointed because it meant that we were not going to be able to go get Taylor Hall. But then it's like looking at Taylor Hall's mindset, like does he actually want to win going to the Buffalo Sabres? Because the Sabres are not going to provide him as much of a chance to win a Stanley Cup as the Avalanche.
And let's not
care how
bash
many
the Sabres too hard. They might make the playoffs next year. Jack Eichel, Taylor Hall, that's a really solid 1-2. Sam Reinhart is not a bad third wing on that line. Golofsson broke out last year. That team could make the playoffs. But if you are legitimately trying to win a cup, Buffalo was not the decision you made, especially when Colorado and Boston both made offers.
Dude, it was not even on radars that he was going to go to the freaking Sabres. It's like that was so out of the blue. Like, dude, if you're talking about contenders here, even the Detroit Red Wings have made the playoffs like more recently than the Sabres, and that's pretty sad. Like I mean, yes, you do have like the early 2000s or 2010s and all that with the Red Wings, but I don't really know where your head was at with going to the Sabres because, like I know Boston was trying hard to get you. Even Columbus was trying hard to get you, and either of those teams would have been a way better option. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy that he did not end up in Nashville, even though he probably would have taken Nashville. People can't develop a forward after coming to them to save their lives. So,
yeah, every forward that goes to Nashville to have their career drop off. And Taylor Hall, just based on how he played in Arizona, if he had gone to Nashville, I would have been very confident that he was going to drop off a cliff.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, in Buffalo too, who knows? I'm just happy he is out east and not on like a very high contender out east or Vegas, even Boston, because I think Boston's going to be really good again next year. Outside of the Torrey Krug loss, they haven't necessarily lost a whole lot. Who knows what's going to happen with Tuukka Rask moving forward, but Boston's still going to be there no matter what. They still have the three-headed monster up front, McAvoy and all those guys out back. So Taylor Hall would have made that team even more scary. And I guess Taylor Hall is kind of going to a team that shouldn't necessarily be on the Avs' radar for cup contenders next year.
Yeah. All right. So there's still a few more dominoes left to drop in free agency. Outside of these most moves have been pretty small. I will say the goalie market went quick.
It did.
Markstrom to Calgary did surprise me a little bit, but it is a pretty solid fit. They definitely
Yeah.
could benefit from having a goalie. Murray to Ottawa will be interesting to watch play out. I want to see how that one
Kind
goes.
of.
Yeah.
That's a pretty significant, up in their prospect situation. And then going to get, Murray. Murray is a 2-time Stanley Cup winner, and you don't necessarily know what type of play he brings to this point, but you'd like to expect that he's gonna try to revive his career in Ottawa.
Yeah. I like Sanderson. I wasn't a huge fan of him at 5. I thought there were better options at the time. But I mean, it wasn't a massive reach. Like I personally, I would have, if I were building for Ottawa with them already having Brandstrom and Shabbat, I would have taken a wing. I would have taken a Holtz or maybe even a Jack Quinn would have been nice there. Or maybe even double up on centers or take someone who could play both, like a Cole Perfetti. But Sanderson is definitely someone that is a high-end prospect in their system. So Ottawa's a team on the rise for sure. They're a team we're going to be looking out for in the next few years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do think it's going to be a few years until they're back into contention, but I have liked what they've done since the Duchesne trade because seriously, that put them in a big hole. Like that, I thought that Ottawa was going to be bottomed out for the next 10 years, but somehow they fleeced the Sharks and got their first rounder in the Sharks tanked, kind of like Ottawa did for the Avalanche. So
yeah. All right, let's get into these Avs. I guess not free agent moves because they were both trades. Let's go chronologically here. Let's start with Brandon Saad, and this is I like this one more of the two. Zadorov was on his way out. It was rumored all season, that Zadorov would be on his way out. It's tough to see him as a person go. I'm not too worried about losing the player, and I really like bringing in Brandon Saad. My biggest priority going into this offseason was I really wanted the Avalanche to add another top 6 winger. That's what Brandon Saad is. Consistently pencil him in for 20 goals right now, assuming they play an 82-game season, which they probably won't. Yeah. But if they do play an 82-game season, he's going somewhere between 20 to 35. So, especially playing with the Avs, he has a good chance to be on the high end of that pace. And he is a very, very good, underrated play driver. When you start digging into his advanced metrics, if you put him on the line with Kadri and Landeskog or Kadri and Burakovsky, guys that can finish, I could see this guy having a career year his first year in Colorado.
Absolutely. Really good players. His career years when the Blackhawks were winning their Stanley Cups, and then on some pretty good retrospect, and we'll get more into really you saw how the Avs rolled over us. He's got to be wanting to join that, right? And then, for that all to come crashing down after that trade, it made me a bit sad. But I do like Saad. He is more of a proven winner to this point. I don't know if it's because of the teams that he's been on or because of the character, but he has won, and Taylor Hall has never won a playoff series. So he's bringing a little bit more of that winning experience. He is a pretty freaking good goal scorer and an underrated two-way guy. He'll hustle back in his own end. I like the player a lot, but at the time I was a bit disappointed. This is also a guy that could realistically be with us outside of this next season.
He's definitely an extension candidate, especially now that there isn't a Taylor Hall on the books.
Yeah.
So I like him. I love his fit here.
It is a very, very solid fit. It's a very solid fit, and going into this offseason, we needed one more piece in that top six forward spot. Donskoy didn't necessarily fit it last season,
Yeah, I mean, it was that whole
but
rotation. It was
Burakovsky
Donskoy,
definitely did.
Nemesnikov, Nichushkin,
Yeah,
even a little bit of JT
yeah,
Compers. Like, all these guys are great third line players. They're just not quite
yeah.
cutting it on the second line.
Burakovsky did make that jump though,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, bringing in Brandon Saad, you have a top six of Landeskog, McKinnon, Rantanen, Kadri, Burakovsky, and Saad, and that top six will rival anyone in the league, like by
Oh,
far. That is an
for sure.
absolutely outstanding top six. But at the time, it's just at the time of that trade, it's just not like at the level that Taylor Hall and the
Yeah.
rest of those five could.
And I know, as soon as Taylor Hall signed in Buffalo, you texted me and you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better. Just because it meant, like,
Yeah,
so we thought Taylor Hall's priorities were here. It turns out they were actually over here. So
yeah,
it made sense. It was definitely, when you're looking at the value of this trade, it seemed pretty clear, like, that in a vacuum, this was a really good value trade for the Avs. It seemed that they came out ahead. They got more for Zadorov than we had expected,
dude.
but it also came with the added dagger of, guess what? Taylor Hall's going somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. But dude, if you're talking about just value wise,
Yeah,
freaking Brandon Saad for Nikita Zadorov, you're not going to get much better than that. Like,
exactly.
I love the guy. Zadorov was, a fan favorite, like actually, and probably a team favorite. So it's probably going to sting some of the boys seeing him go. Um, but at the same time, it's like they'll realize it's like, oh wait, we still have Byram and Timmins in the system that are pushing very hard for roster spots. One of the three of Cole, Zadorov, and Graves has to go, and it was between probably Graves and Zadorov fetch the higher value. And it ended up being Zadorov because of the fact that freaking A, it's like you got Brendan Saad. So
Yeah.
I
Chicago
know
really
Billy and
needed
I,
a defenseman.
yeah. Zadorov, it's going to be sad seeing him go. You're there is going to be a little bit of like, oh wait, where's like the physicality on the back end next season? But the way that the NHL is kind of trending, it's like you don't necessarily need a lot of that,
Yeah,
and you get some of that with the other guys. Still, it's like Makar is not afraid to throw the body around. You've seen it from
exactly.
Graves plenty of times. Hopefully, Johnson actually is able to come back. There are rumors about him being out longer term, but at the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that losing Zadorov is going to be that much of a hit, especially if Bowen Byram or Timmins can come in and fill that role.
Yeah, you and it's not like the Avs are exactly lacking in grit. You can't pretend that a team that's going to roll out Landeskog, Kadri, and Saad potentially on a line is
No,
just they
that's
just
the
don't
thing.
have the grit. Like the Avs have the grit. The role, a lot of fans want to see that enforcer role, and the fact of the matter is that it's just not a role that is still as useful in the NHL as
Yeah,
it was in the early 2000s. It's a little bit outdated. The Avalanche are just fine. The way that they win a cup is not by adding grit, it's by adding talent and becoming a better team. You don't win cups anymore by out physicaling the other team. Despite Dallas's run, which had a lot of
yeah.
flukiness to it,
Oh,
Tampa Bay Lightning are the team that won the cup. It wasn't the grittiest team, it was the most
no.
talented team in the league that won the cup.
And it's not like we don't have that grittiness, especially up
Exactly.
front, like you
It's
just
just a
said,
different
Billy.
kind
It's
of
like,
grittiness. It's not exclusive grittiness. Our players that
but it's like
are gritty and they're good at hockey too.
grind your balls off, gritty. It's like, dude, it's like you still have Mount Calvert, like Nazem Kadri is going to be grinding out there. Even like Brandon Saad, dude, Landeskog. It's like, especially the front, it's going to be extremely fun to watch. And another thing with the Saad trade, it does give this top six a lot of like variability and flexibility. Like they're going to be able to mix and match those top six. And honestly, I will be very, very if we see a top six. Um, like those top six that we just talked about being mixed in with the bottom six. I think those top six are going to be like intertwined, interchanged like all season, and I don't really see a world unless there's a big losing streak in which Bednar like puts Nichushkin or Donskoy back in the top six. I think you're gonna see those top six like mixed around all the time, and and really figure out ways to win.
I think for the most part you're right, but
Yeah.
Bednar does like to get a little freaky sometimes. So like he
Yeah.
threw Burakovsky on the third line in the playoffs a few times. So like I think we're gonna see some different looks, especially matchup dependent and things like that. But I think for the most part you're right. It's like there's a top
Yeah, I
six
agree.
and there's a bottom six, and there's gonna be a lot of mixing up the top six, but within the top six.
I agree, but then this also like gives the Avs like a lot of comfort on rolling out their true three-headed monster with Landy, Mack, and Rantanen, and not really worrying about the second line going out there and being able to produce, because the second line of Saad, Burakovsky, and Kadri is terrific. It's absolutely
Yeah,
terrific.
that's
It's
a
like
great second line.
that is, especially just because of like some of the grittiness that Kadri and Saad could bring. Some finishing actually that all three of them can bring, and some playmaking from Burakovsky and all that. So that's going to be a really fun second line. But there are going to be opportunities for Saad or Berkey to go up to the first line and kind of replace Landy and bring Landy back down. And I mean, imagine the second line of Saad, Landy, and Kadri.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's no one wants to play against that line. It's
The third line, or Don's way up and hurt the third line, or something like that. So this is a really big score for the Avalanche, especially pretty much only giving up. I mean, Zadorov, like Lindholm.
Zadorov, which we knew.
Lindholm was an AHL player, but then as we've seen on Friday, it's like Sakic had no problem retooling his system, especially in the AHL. Like the Eagles were freaking pleased on Friday. I know we weren't, but
Yeah, I want to say like between both of these trades, there's no debate. Both of these trades make the Avalanche better. Like, there's no question about it. Either one of them.
yeah,
Brandon Saad for Zadorov, that makes the Avalanche better. Devon Toews for 2 second-round picks. Obviously, you're getting a player for picks. That makes the Avalanche better. The Avalanche are a better team today than they were 2 weeks ago. So, on that count, at the very least, the Avs pass. Like, this offseason,
dude.
we can consider it a success.
This is a team, though, that going into this offseason, going into next year, before free agency, before the draft, was the odds-on favorite to win the Stanley Cup.
Yep, and now they're better.
And after the free agency, they are significantly better without having to give up like true like roster spots.
Yeah.
Zadorov is the only one that you could argue for.
We didn't give up a high-end
first-round
prospect.
pick or
We didn't give up a first-round pick, and the only roster player we gave up was Zadorov, and that wasn't unexpected. That was like we pretty much knew we were giving up Zadorov.
Dude, and you have Bowen Byram, a very, very top-end defensive prospect to try to come and fill that role.
Yeah.
So,
all right, so let's get into the last guy we're going to talk about, and that's the Toews trade. I have mixed feelings about this one. It's another one. Marshall, you've talked me into it a little bit, and just as time has passed, it's grown on me. But I still have a couple things that I want to see before I say that I like it. I like Devon Toews, the player, a lot. Like, legitimate high end second pairing defenseman. Not a top pairing defenseman on an elite team defensively, but a top pairing defenseman on a team that's not so great. But definitely a very, very good player. Two things that hold me back from just outright calling it a win. The first one, I would love to have some assurance that this means the Avalanche are going to give Bowen Byram some playing time. Maybe that means Ian Cole is the seventh defenseman. Maybe that means that someone else is even moved or something like that. But I've watched the Avs and been a fan for too long to have confidence that this doesn't just mean Bowen Byram spends another year in the WHL, which I'm really hoping doesn't happen. And then the other thing, which this is a little bit nitpicky, but it is a good value in a vacuum. But after we just watched Ryan Murray go for a 5th-round pick, Nate Schmidt go for a 3rd-round pick, and we know that the Islanders are fairly cap-strapped, I just wonder if you maybe could have leveraged them a little bit more and even given them like a 2nd and a 3rd. But again, that is a little bit nitpicky. Just straight value. This is a good value. I'm picky in the COVID world when we're the team with cap. I kind of wanted to see us give up a little bit less.
So this is where I get very excited because Billy, I had told you that like, oh man, I'm really upset about like the Saad trade because it means we're not getting Taylor Hall. But I also did tell you it's like if we can make another significant move, then it would make me extremely happy because with the Taylor Hall move, this Devon Toews trade could not happen. Could
Yeah,
absolutely
no
not happen
question.
in any sense of the word. And then when I found that out, especially watching him in the playoffs last season and him being a true ascending like top four defenseman that is two-way, drives play absolutely outstanding, and just this I was absolutely ecstatic. I really was, especially I know Billy, it's like the 2 second round picks could end up maybe, but we didn't have to give up a first round pick for a guy that's going to come in and be a, a true impact player on the Avalanche. Like Devon Toews is a guy that's going to be slotted either right next to Gerard or right next to McCarr, and either way, either of those pairings are going to be extremely fun to watch and are going to be complete play drivers.
Guys that can skate, guys that can move the puck, all around talented modern defensemen, all three of them. And Devon Taves is a top four defenseman, no question about it, that we have
Not
under
even.
our control for multiple years. He's an RFA. He does need a contract. That's we
And I
we will
think
have to, before fully evaluating this trade, we will need to see how much the Avs sign him for, just to see like what are the years on it, how much money is he making. So that part will be interesting to watch, but on the surface, the Avs defense is starting to look really, really strong.
dangerous, man. Like very, very dangerous. I mean, dude, the I have a couple questions. Billy, you already touched on it. It's like what is Devon Taves' contract going to be looking like? And I do feel like that is part of the reason why the market value is a little bit higher is because you would now have his contract under control.
Yeah.
Like with Ryan Murray and then Nate Schmidt, it's like they already had their contract signed. Now you could do whatever you want with Devon Taves.
We can get him for multiple years. We can get him for 1 year. That's up to us. That's not a predetermined thing.
Yeah, and I do think that's why it fetched a little bit of a higher market value. Still, no high-end prospects, no first-round picks. I'm fine with that. We'll have to evaluate this trade going down in the future, but as it is today, the Avalanche are a much better team. A much, much,
Yes,
much better
definitely.
team by bringing in both Saad and Toews. Like, that is, dude, the Avs are dangerous next season.
They're the Cup favorites before this. They're easily
Yes.
still the Cup favorites. I don't know how much heavier it gets when you're a plus 800 Cup favorite. Like, you can't get that much better in the NHL. But the Avs are they're a better team. I don't think there's anyone out there that you could ask and say, you know what? The Colorado Avalanche are a worse hockey team today than they were 4 days ago.
Dude,
there's not much
if
debate about that.
that's the case, they don't watch hockey. They don't watch hockey if that's the thing. My second question, because honestly, it's going to be a little bit hard trying to sign Jost and who's the other free agent? We already signed Gravy.
No, we still need Gravy. We signed Burakovsky.
No, we signed Gravy,
arbitrating
dude.
or whatever, doing the arbitration.
No, we signed him for
Wait, did we sign him today? Oh, that's right. I saw that it was a 3-year deal. I didn't see the money on it.
So I can't remember. It's blanking on me, but we still need to sign.
I think he was the last one. It was him and Jost.
Okay, but as it sits right now, I do not think we have enough money to be. And Nieto, I guess, is another guy you can think of. Okay, but as it is right now, the Avs are going to be hard pressed to find the money to even sign Jost. And I think there is another guy that I'm blanking on right now. But that does bring into question, like, is there some sort of injury that's happening that we don't necessarily know about? And that's the reason that we're bringing in a guy like Devon Toews, especially on the back end, like Eric Johnson, or maybe one of the goaltenders that we don't necessarily know at this point in time. So it is going to have to play out further until we can give a full evaluation for this. But me personally, I am more excited about the Devon Toews trade than the Brandon Saad trade. And I know Billy has
I think we're flipped
different.
On that. I'm more excited about the Saad trade.
Okay, I guess it kind of is due to the fact that like I wasn't extremely happy about the Saad trade at the start, but now that we have Devon Toews, under wraps with Saad, dude, you couldn't have asked for much better than that from Joe Sakic.
Yeah.
Especially like Taylor Hall. Dude, Taylor Hall was going to be probably a 1 year rental, and now you have two guys that could realistically, barring cap situation and Nathan McKinnon's contract and all that's coming up, could be key foundational players for at least 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And I mean, let's just look at these two trades. Let's put them together. Let's look at what we gave up and what we got. Net gains. I don't care about our 7th defenseman / AHL defenseman swap. Let's just take Lindholm and I already forgot the Chicago player's name out of it, but our new player. Let's talk. So we got Brandon Saad and we got Devon Toews. We gave up Nikita Zadorov and 2 second-round picks. All together, just putting it together, that's a steal. That we won that trade. I don't care.
Steal. That is a steal, especially because of the fact that I keep saying it, that either Zadorov, Graves, or Cole were going to have to be moved to try to make some space for Timmins or Byron. And the market, as we've seen, has fetched the most value for Nikita Zadorov, probably because of his size, hard-hitting defenseman, kind of a guy that's like a bit of an anomaly in the NHL right now. So, but just the fact that we were able to get roster players aside, or non-roster players, AHL picks aside, Zadorov for Devon Toews and Brandon Saad on upgrading our roster for next season, that makes the Avs an immediate, super threat.
Yeah, I think the Avs are the best team in the West. Even after seeing Vegas sign Pietrangelo, I think that the Avs, because Vegas also had to move players out, so I think that the Avs' net increase is greater than Vegas's so far in this offseason.
Yeah, and they were a better regular season team than
and
last year.
Let's be completely honest. Those are the two teams we're looking at because those are probably the two best teams in the West. There's always someone comes out of nowhere. St. Louis is still a good team. Dallas, maybe they can ride their crazy momentum, but the two teams that legitimately look like the two best in the West are Colorado and Vegas.
Yeah. I mean, I'm extremely excited. Like I said, we're going to have to give it a few months, let the regular season start, let us figure out exactly what the injuries are looking like, what our roster is going to be looking like, whether or not Bowen Byram's truly going to be going to Sweden or whatnot, or back to the Dub. But as we sit right now, the Avs could be looking for a President's Trophy, especially if we all stay healthy.
Yep. And more importantly, we could be looking at a Stanley Cup.
Yes.
So that's what I want, and I think that's what all of Avs Nation wants.
No, that's what we all want.
I think our window started this last season, and I think we've got at least 3 years left in that window, and it's on making good picks like Justin Barron and Jean-Luc Foudy. That's what extends that window. So the Avalanche have at least 3 years, and maybe more than any other team, we have a chance to extend that out even further by drafting well, making good and managing our assets well, and like we did in these trades, coming out on the better end as far as value is concerned. So I'm happy with the direction that the Avs are headed in. I'm glad that we have Sakic running this roster because
if
he knows what he is
doing.
If
he was not in contention for GM of the year last year, he is definitely being looked at right now by the voters. So,
all right, yeah. I mean, I don't know why he wasn't last year, so we'll have to see on that one. We'll find out. But any last kind of words you want to get in here before we hop on out of here for the day?
Really quick, I just wanted to ask your opinion on the Tyson Barrie signing in Edmonton. How much does that push their needle?
Perfect for Edmonton.
I think so too.
It's perfect for Barrie. That Barrie's gonna blow up on that power play. Tyson Barrie might score 65 points next year. He might score 70 points next year.
I just don't really know how much that pushes their needle though.
I don't know that it does a ton. I love it for Barrie more than I love it for Edmonton, but I still do like it for Edmonton.
Yeah.
Their biggest problem has still been that they do not have a winger, and that's their biggest need.
Or just defense of depth or goaltending. So
if you asked me if they could sign Barry or Dadonov, I would have said go with Dadonov, but I still think that Barry is a really good fit. We are gonna have to watch them and see what they do as far as acquiring something on the side of their forwards. So we'll have to see. I'm happy for Tyson Barrie because I think that's perfect for him. Quarterbacking a power play with Draisaitl and McDavid is going to lead to him having a lot of points. And I haven't seen the odds come out yet, but when they do, I might put a couple bucks on him to win a Norris, just because he might blow up statistically.
Yeah, I'm happy for Barry. Always going to be a guy that I root for, so that's why I just thought I'd ask real quick. But yeah, that's kind of it for me.
All right. Well, thank you to all our viewers for watching. If you're still in that live chat, go ahead and hit that like button while you're here. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, why not? Go ahead, subscribe. You can see the video while we record. You can watch us stream it live. All that usually comes out about a day later on all of our other platforms, and those include iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can find us. So check us out wherever you prefer, and we will see you in our next episode.